I'm seeing a Lando that I've not seen before, which is someone that's making a lot of mistakes under pressure.
I think it raises more questions as well about Lando's racecraft under pressure.
Oscar is a much more decisive racing driver in a racing situation than Lando Norris.
That is now battle lines drawn.
When you're thinking, OK, who's going to be quick this weekend, you wonder whether the Max Verstappen factor might come into play this weekend.
We might be back towards a Max versus McLarens at the front.
With the Italian media now turning on Fred Vasseur, the pressure is mounting higher than ever.
Ferrari, they almost won the Constructors' Championship last year. Their strategies have been good, the pit stops are good, they're not far away.
So how do you rate their chances in Austria?
Not good.
It's a big week for Formula One. We're going racing at a track which always gives us action, and we finally get to see our favourite sport on the big screen. F1 The Movie is here, and we've been talking to two of its stars.
It was kind of radical because we shot a lot of the movie live with the real races.
Me and Brad, after the national anthem at that race in Silverstone, we spin, We Will Rock You's playing and we're supposed to walk to the cars. We rehearsed it a million times. On the day when we're shooting it, Carlos Sainz walks right in front of me. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess Carlos Sainz is in the movie now.
There'll be more from Damson, Idris and Kerry Condon later in the show, but we've got to discuss this weekend's Austrian Grand Prix first. So welcome to F1 Nation. I'm Tom Clarkson, and joining me is former Renault driver and now F1 TV commentator Jolyon Palmer, and F1 TV's lead presenter Laura Winter. A very warm welcome to you both. Now, Jolyon, we have to start with you. A couple of weeks ago, just before Canada, there was about to be some big news in the Palmer household. Has it broken?
It has, and I have not. Little baby boy has arrived, so I'm feeling fresh as a daisy, TC.
Oh, mate, that's awesome. What's baby Palmer called?
He's called Jimmy, James Palmer.
So another JP?
Another JP, crucially.
Is he going to be a racing driver?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to... You know what? I'm not going to be the dad that on 2 weeks old is like, right, this is going to be my next Formula One protege.
Yeah, but
we'll see. If he's got a natural flair, maybe.
I think Jos Verstappen was probably thinking exactly this with Max.
Yeah. Maybe that's where I'm heading. Down the Verstappen rule of thought, and he's going to get in a go-kart. He walks at about a year. Go-karts at about 18 months, is it?
I think something like that, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Right, you've not said no, have you, Jolyon? So I think this is on.
Look, I can't see it. I can't see it happening.
Well, JP, many congratulations from all of us.
Congrats, Jolyon. So happy for you.
Now, Laura, you have been very busy since the last race in Montreal.
Yes.
What have you been up to?
I know I can't claim newborn bubble brokenness, but I am a bit jet lagged, so I haven't also slept very well. But I went to New York after the Canadian Grand Prix, flew straight out at about 8 p.m. after the race, and we had the New York premiere of F1 the Movie. So that was the world premiere in New York Times Square, which is just the most mad place anyway. And then you put 10 F1 cars and a grid and a massive stage and grandstands there, and bring world stars of screen and stage and music and sport along. It was nuts. So I was one of the hosts for the live stream for that one, and it was mad. Really, really fun to be a part of. And I basically kind of just interviewed the F1 drivers though, so it felt like a relatively normal day at work in that sense. And then you looked up and you remembered where you were, and you realised they weren't in team kit, and you were wearing a gown, and they were in suits, and it was all a bit weird. So it was mega, really, really fun night.
Everything I've seen online made me think it was absolutely awesome.
It was a lot of fun. And what's funny, and one of the things I noted on the live stream on the evening, is that these drivers are fearless on track, but walk them down a grey carpet at a film premiere, they're quaking in their boots. Ollie Behrman looked like a lost lamb. Wanted to call his mum to get her to bring him home. He had no idea where he was going or what he was doing. Bless him. They genuinely were nervous, and everyone around New York Times Square, because it was shut off in a sense of where, the boundaries of the event were, but open to the crowds and the elements everywhere else. And you had just people and fans walking past and screaming and shouting the whole time. It was really cool. And I think the drivers really enjoyed it.
Now, the last time we spoke on the pod, we said this title battle between McLaren teammates Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris simply had to heat up sooner rather than later. And it certainly did that in Montreal, didn't it?
No, he's ripped off the front wing! The McLarens collide! Lando Norris into the wall and out of the race!
Sorry, oh my bad. Stupid for me.
So Lando didn't finish the race, but Oscar held on to P4 to move 22 points clear at the top of the World Championship. So guys, first of all, your thoughts on that incident. Let's get the racing driver's perspective first of all.
Yeah, the one that we've been waiting for, wasn't it? First of all, 2 McLarens racing each other on track, brilliant. And we spoke about it before, as you said, and we were thinking, when is this going to get spicy? And it kind of did, but in the least spicy way, because there was no level of controversy about the incident. There was no level of 50-50. In the end, it was very much a Lando Norris error. And he admitted it, didn't he? Straight away. He knew that he'd made a bit of a mistake. And it was a shame because actually, I thought he'd had a brilliant drive to get there. When you see how difficult it was for anyone to overtake, the fact that Lando's come through from 7th to try and fight Oscar, has actually made an overtake, and then they're duking it out over a couple of corners. You know, it was impressive until it was really unimpressive and he made that mistake. So kind of a big fireworks moment, but actually it was something in nothing that probably they'll get away with as a team and stay harmonious, I reckon.
It was definitely a Corma rather than a Vindaloo, wasn't it?
Yeah, we'll give it that.
In terms of spice. But Jolyon, you said last time you were on the show that, you know, with a 10-point advantage, Oscar now had something to play with. So with this 22-point advantage he now has, how much is it advantage Oscar Piastri now?
I think it's a lot. I mean, yeah, we spoke about it. The 10 points is not much. In the grand scheme of 24 races, 25 points for a win, 10 points after 9 rounds is nothing. But it was enough that Lando was really, really desperate to take those extra points back on Oscar in the race. He didn't want to sit another 2 down when you can go 2 up. So it's a 4-point swing. And it's all about having that sort of momentum and a bit of psychological advantage as well between teammates. And now it goes to 22. And the same thing I said last week still applies. You know, another mistake for Lando, a DNF, and you're up to 47 points, which is suddenly you're thinking, wow, this is Oscar's to lose. Whereas a DNF for Oscar, and Lando basically levels it out. So Oscar has a massive cushion now when the cars are so reliable. The drivers generally aren't making many mistakes. He's looking really good. And he's just driving so well. All the same things apply. You know, the level-headedness, even on not an easy weekend for him. He's still fighting for a podium. He's still there or thereabouts in qualifying. I'm feeling that he's got the momentum now in the championship massively.
Laura, how was Lando at the premiere in New York?
So he came up for the interview, and we always get these sort of 10, 15 seconds just before we come live. So we always make small talk and just check in how they are. So I asked him how he was, and he was like, "This is mad, isn't it?" And then I said, "Look, how are you feeling after yesterday?" And he went, I'm good, thanks." And he genuinely seemed like, you know, he wasn't bristling, he wasn't defensive. He did genuinely seem that he'd come to terms with it and, you know, made peace with it in some capacity. And then I said, you know, I was sorry to see it. And he went, "Why are you sorry?" And I was like, "It's just something people say, Lando." But he, come on, just play along here. But no, he genuinely, like, you know, he made a joke about it and he kind of immediately wanted to move on, I suppose, and start afresh in Austria, a track we know he goes well at. I think I agree with what Jolyon said there. In terms of keeping the team harmony, absolutely. This was the mildest way they could have come to contact on the track. One driver immediately took responsibility. The damage isn't that great, yes, to Lando for a DNF, but in terms of the team points, they've got such a huge buffer in the constructor standings, it's not going to really impact that. In terms of the driver standings, they still have that buffer.
And they were fighting over 4th, weren't they? It was not like they haven't blown a win.
It's not the win.
It's not even a podium they've lost. They've lost a 5th place. So,
yeah.
But Lando wears his heart on his sleeve, doesn't he? So you kind of you can feel his emotion when, with the amount of times we've already addressed this year, you know, he'll come out and he'll be so disappointed and he'll be berating himself. a little bit like we've seen with maybe a Charles earlier on in his career when he said, I'm stupid, and you're sort of...
Yeah, it's tough radio, isn't it?
They really show their emotions well, whereas other drivers hide it a little bit more, and, you don't get that empathy so much because they're just bottling it up or controlling it in that way.
It puts a lot of pressure on Lando, doesn't it? In that you've already said, Jolyon, that he was desperate to get some of those points back on Oscar, which might be one of the reasons that led to the incident. Just a little bit too desperate. It's interesting to see where it goes from here, isn't it? Sort of Lando 2.0. I felt earlier in the year that we saw a different Lando, a calmer Lando, and yet Montreal was a sort of snap back into what we've seen over the previous 6 years. He was the faster of the two McLaren drivers all weekend, yet only qualified 7th and made that mistake in the race. I'm fascinated to see how he bounces back in Austria.
But so I would have said from Lando's career that he could have been a champion for the whole way through. He's one of those drivers that you see. I saw him in junior formula. Then he came through the ranks in F2, didn't win it, but you could see the natural talent when things got slippery or difficult. He was a rookie and he did really well. Then he got to Formula One with McLaren, and you could just see these flashes of brilliance from him. The Sochi race that he didn't win, but it was an amazing drive. And the whole time, he has been, in my mind, an exceptionally quick driver. His qualifying pace I put right up there with anyone. And he actually hasn't made many mistakes in his career. But this year, it feels like something has changed. And obviously one thing that's changed is that he was championship favourite coming into the season. He now has the best car. There's nowhere to hide when you're, the form driver coming into the year. You have the best car. The other 19 drivers are really looking at you and thinking, this is yours to lose in Melbourne. But he started the year really well, didn't he? Won the race from pole, and there was a lot that could have gone wrong there. But as the season's going on, I'm seeing a Lando that I've not seen before, which is someone that's making a lot of mistakes under pressure. And Formula One's all about pressure. As a rookie, you come in and there's pressure. There's nowhere to hide in any race. And he's won races before. Abu Dhabi was pressure with the Constructors' Championship on the line. Monaco was pressure as well. There's not a more pressure qualifying than the Monaco qualifying, and he got pole. But the Q3, 2 mistakes that he made in Canada, and then the misjudgment with Oscar, for me, it was just a pressure thing. He's tried to make the move. The adrenaline goes through the roof. His heart's absolutely beating. He knows that this is his one chance to get his elbows out, beat his teammate, and make a real stand for the championship. But it's a complete misjudgment that I think must be from the pressure that he's probably added on himself at that moment. Because, like I said, they're fighting for 4th and 5th in a 2-point swing. But he's heaping the pressure on, even if other people aren't, which generally they are. So it becomes this difficult situation for him. And the good thing is, he had great pace. The bad thing is he's not able to use it often enough right now.
It shows how important that 2-point swing is to him as well, that he was willing to make that lunge and into a gap that ultimately wasn't there. And he thought that Oscar was going to dink further right than he did. And Oscar was expecting him to come around to the right-hand side. And obviously he just lunged down in the left and into the back of his teammate and into the wall. But I think it raises more questions as well about Lando's racecraft under pressure and his ability to overtake. We've discussed how perhaps Max Verstappen races differently against Lando Norris as he does to Oscar Piastri, whether that's because Max and Lando raced each other a lot last year, and Max knows how to race him and can predict more what Lando's going to do. You're talking about that pressure, and I think it's in those moments that Lando isn't able to execute at first or even second time of asking sometimes.
But the move that he put in at the hairpin was amazing.
Oh, stunning. Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's the frustration, I think, for him there, because it was it's 2 car lengths back. Oscar's not expecting it, and if he had just been able to stop it on the apex more, that's done. But he couldn't, and Oscar's a brilliant racer as well.
JP, I'm going to disagree with you on that. I watched your analysis last week and saying what a great move that was. I thought Oscar was playing with him, and hence Lando outbraked himself at the hairpin. Oscar got the switchback, which gave him the inside line going into the chicane. And I think that frustration there was a contributing factor to what then happened on the run down to turn 1.
So what do you think happens if Lando doesn't go for the move at the hairpin?
I think he's just got to be patient.
But then there's no chance to be patient because he's in a DRS train. So as soon as he's within as soon as Oscar's within a second of Antonelli in front, there is no chance for Lando to make a move at the chicane because you're just not going to get the overspeed. He's got the slipstream, he's got the DRS. So that chance goes. So the only thing you can do is to go for the hairpin move, which he has done a lot of times before. And if Oscar was playing games, and he's cool and calculated, maybe. But if he was, it's a serious game to play when you can brake a bit later, you can cover the middle of the road, and you're just not going to be passed. To accept that you're going to be passed, thinking you can and he only just repassed him at the chicane. I think that's a game too far for Oscar, personally.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing that he had to have a go to mix it up because of that DRS train behind Antonelli, but I think Oscar was in control of the situation. And you guys were talking about Piastri's battles with Max Verstappen. I think Max treats Oscar differently because Oscar is a much more decisive racing driver in a racing situation than Lando Norris. And I think we see it time and again with Lando. I think Lando is a brilliantly fast driver of racing cars, but he's not as good a racing driver as Oscar Piastri.
I think Oscar, to be fair, is about the best racer in the field as well. So I think that matchup is tough, and I would agree with that sentiment. We've seen many times now Oscar be brilliant in wheel-to-wheel, and we've seen Lando a few times not quite get it completely right. I still think with that move, though, at the hairpin, he's given himself a chance by going for it and getting there. And he's given himself actually a really great chance of trying to pass at the chicane or turn one. And if he doesn't go for the hairpin move, Lando, he's just not going to come past. The DRS train's going to mean it's all negated. So the first part is great, but then it's just the indecision in the end. Obviously he'll be kicking himself thinking he should have gone to the right-hand side and given himself another shot at turn one. And these are all just the really tough moments when you have split seconds to try and choose which way to go. And he's got it wrong. But it also reminded, as you were talking before, Laura, do you remember that Red Bull crash at Baku?
He's going to try and dive down. The inside, they have crashed. They've gone into each other. Daniel Ricciardo late braking, couldn't stop in time. Max Verstappen was right in front of him. And the two Red Bulls who have been touching and barging and banging all afternoon have had one bang too many.
Danny Rick fired it down the inside of Max. Max had the tiniest little move under braking, and they both ended up in a heap at turn one. Max got a bit of blame for that one for moving under braking, but for me, that was also a massively aggressive move from Danny Rick. And it was when you're fighting with your teammate, there's that extra little bit of incentive to try and do something different. And especially when your teammate is your championship rival as well, you're trying to kind of bust through a gap that might not necessarily be there, but you're taking these extra risks and chances. And I think Lando was just kind of hoping that the gap would be there, and he was just so hell-bent on it being there that when it wasn't, he knew straight away that he'd fluffed it, really.
It's tough, JP, isn't it? Because you're taking those extra risks, but in a scenario in which the number one rule is do not make contact with your teammate. So the margins are even more razor thin than we're used to, than we see in Formula One anyway. And, the limit is right there.
The other interesting thing actually on that is I feel like McLaren have opened themselves up to this by kind of admitting for weeks before that at some point they will make contact. At some point it's inevitable in this. They're kind of diminishing that fear of you don't crash with your teammate. They're kind of saying, it will happen, which almost invites it to happen a little bit more than if you've got a team boss that's, absolutely drilling it in. And maybe it would happen regardless, but I think that almost lets Lando a little bit more off the hook.
And I think how McLaren deals with this situation now will have a massive impact going forward. I mean, that 2018 incident between the Red Bull drivers in Baku, that was the moment that Daniel Ricciardo decided to leave the team because Helmut Marko came out in defence of Max Verstappen. And Daniel was so furious, he said, I've had it with this team. So what does McLaren do? Look, final talking point on this. What does McLaren do now? Because it's gone wrong once. Andrea Stella, I think, was quoted after the race as saying it's unacceptable, which is apportioning blame even more on Lando, even though Lando fessed up after the race. But what do they do to maintain the harmony and not end up with a situation that spirals and take you back to the Red Bull situation in 2018?
it's gone wrong, but it's not, I think, gone wrong enough for McLaren for there to be a massive overhaul of how they approach racing and the terms of engagement or papaya rules of 2024. Because, yes, you had one car DNF with minor damage, but you had another car that stayed within the race that has extended the lead at the top of the championship. Like Jolyon said earlier, like we alluded to, they haven't lost a win. They weren't racing they were kind of racing for a podium, but they haven't lost that podium. So I don't know if McLaren will change the approach too much. They will obviously reiterate, give each other space, be fair, be clean, be hard on track. I think for our sake as viewers, as fans, as media in the sport, I wouldn't want them to suddenly say, right, this is our number one driver, this is our number two, these are the rules of engagement, you don't. We want them to continue to race, right? Absolutely. It's far too early in the season for that anyway. And I know, Jolyon, you were saying 22 points is a big gap. It's also one DNF for Oscar one way and a win for Lando, and Lando's winning.
Yeah.
Lando's leading the championship again. So we're not even halfway through the season. It's still so early doors for McLaren, I think, to put in any stronger terms. I'm sure they will reiterate, to keep things clean, to not make mistakes or misjudgments. But I hope for all of our sake, they continue to race because it's great for us to watch.
So the other thing I was thinking after the incident and with everything going on is, aren't we kind of lucky from a neutral point of view that McLaren are the team with the best car here? Because any other team, and we already know who's the champion. If Red Bull have the best car, Max is champion. If Mercedes have, this year, George will be champion. If Ferrari have, Charles is looking like he's going to be champion. Whereas McLaren are the team. Aston Martin, it's Fernando. Alpine, it's Pierre. All of these teams have a much more clear-cut number one and number two, just because of the hierarchy, not because of status or anything, but just because of the pace and performance. Whereas McLaren, every weekend, you don't know who's going to come out on top there. They cannot at this stage now say, Oscar's our guy. That's not going to happen. But it is back to the korma, isn't it? It's such a mild thing. Lando took the blame. He caused the crash. But what I would say is, if you're in Oscar's shoes here, you've got to bank that. You've got to know that this guy is willing to potentially cause a crash to come through for fourth place. That is now battle lines drawn. Even if he's not going to say it in the media, they're all going to play happy families, but that's battle lines drawn. I remember when I was racing with Renault 2016, round 5, we come to Barcelona. The last lap, I think I'm in 12th place. K-Mag is on fresher tyres. He's trying to hunt me down in 13th. We're not going to score a point. And he fires in a lunge at turn 13 of the old Barcelona, which you'll have never seen an overtake there ever in your life. It was the corner before the final chicane. So K-Mag has fired in a lunge from like 2 car lengths back. I don't think he's braked till he's got to the apex. We've both run through the final chicane. And I've held on to the place, and he's said, oh, sorry, that was a bit too much. And I thought, fine. But you bank it, and you think, this guy is willing to be, that aggressive to try and get a 12th place. And now Oscar has to kind of bank that and think, we now race each other a little bit harder, a little bit differently.
This episode is sponsored by Trade Coffee. You know your coffee's good when someone asks where you got it and the answer isn't a cafe, it's your own kitchen. That's the kind of experience you can expect with Trade Coffee. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the US, working with over 50 of the country's best roasters to deliver fresh small batch coffee straight to your door. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees to curate more than 450 incredible roasts. Whether you're an espresso fan or a cold brew devotee, Trade helps you discover coffee that matches your exact taste. Just take their quiz, and in less than a minute, they'll match you with roasts you'll actually enjoy. And if the first bag isn't quite right, they'll replace it for free. They got it absolutely spot on for me. I received an espresso roast from Alma Coffee, a small batch farm-to-cup company in Georgia. It's chocolatey, nutty, everything I love. Even the courier said I've been enjoying the smell coming from that parcel all morning. And she wasn't wrong. It smelled incredible before I even opened it. And I'm already looking forward to opening a fresh bag when my next order arrives. And with Trade's flexible subscription, you can pause or shift delivery while you're away, ideal if you're travelling or planning time out of town. It's all about giving you cafe-quality coffee at home without the guesswork and without the queues. And right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com drinktrade.com/nation. That's drinktrade.com/nation for 50% off your 1 month trial. drinktrade.com/nation. Well, let's now focus on this weekend's Austrian Grand Prix. Last year's race at the Red Bull Ring ended just as dramatically as Canada, with Max Verstappen and Lando Norris again colliding in the closing laps as they fought for the lead. That gifted George Russell the victory. Could he win on merit this year, or will Max Verstappen win Red Bull's home race for the 5th time? Or will McLaren be on the top step for the first time since David Coulthard back in 2001? Let's start by talking about the track. Jolyon, its characteristics and challenges. It's a short one, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like it. It's super short, sort of 7 corners. The first half is low speed, kind of hairpin-like corners. The first corners are a little bit quicker than that. Big undulations as well. The rise up towards the second big braking zone, the second corner, is massive. And then you've got a really good flowing section through the middle and the end of the lap. And honestly, you're back over the start-finish before you know it. You just do a few corners. The second half comes in a flash. You pick it up through 2 left-handers. Those final 2 corners you're through in literally seconds. The run out the final corner is tiny, and you're starting a lap again, which means that it's a really short lap. It means that the margins are tiny, but it's technical enough that it's quite error-inducing. It's really easy to have a lock-up in those first corners, get slightly wide in the second half of the lap, and so it's a good technical circuit. And the great thing is you can overtake really well. It lends itself so brilliantly to racing as we've seen last year.
The margins are very small, except last year in qualifying. Do you remember Max Verstappen put in that amazing Q3 lap where he was 0.4 of a second faster than anyone else, and everyone else was separated by hundredths? So when you're thinking, okay, who's going to be quick this weekend, you wonder whether the Max Verstappen factor might come into play this weekend.
I reckon so. It's obviously Red Bull's home race. They go big. Max has a huge amount of home support there as well. And it's a circuit that does kind of suit Red Bull. Thankfully, it's their home race, and it's a good one for them. The long, sweeping, fast corners. I remember Max last year was absolutely drilling it through the fast stuff and making a huge difference, as you said. So I think this is a great chance for him. And I see it being a harder one definitely for Ferrari and a little bit for Mercedes. So I think we might be back towards a Max versus McLarens at the front in terms of a conventional battle. But you never know.
And this is the final race where Max is, under threat, if you like, of a race ban. He's on those 11 points. He loses 2 on the Monday after Austria. I mean, Laura, did you think Max was a little subdued in Canada? I don't know whether it's related to the point situation. Did you see any difference there, and do you think we'll see any difference in Austria?
On track, I think, was he playing it? I can't imagine Max Verstappen ever playing it safe. And I think also when Max Verstappen's on the back foot, when something has happened that means he feels the world's a little bit against him, we tend to see the very best of him in these defiant drives that kind of defy belief and odds and all of that. He managed in Canada to get that P2, but it was a quieter weekend. It was a kind of a weekend in which play it safe, I think, is too strong a phrase, but as close as you can get to that as a 4-time world champ who drives the way Max Verstappen does. I think in Austria, it's a track that invites, as Jolyon said, overtaking, and a track that we've seen in recent years has seen a lot of contact as well. And so you can so easily get swept up in something that you don't mean to, and 1 penalty point isn't much to get. So if it is a case of Max versus Oscar versus Lando for the win this weekend, as it's kind of shaping up to be, if the Mercedes and the Ferraris do fall away from the pace a little bit, then he could well get embroiled in something, and that 1 point's easily there.
It's the sort of thing where you can force another driver off the road, or you can go off track and gain a position in the first couple of corners. That's the sort of race that Austria could be. But also, guys, it's actually not that easy to get penalty points. 8 drivers out of 20 have no penalty points on their licence at all, and only 4 drivers have got more than 3. So I think Max, it's going to be pretty possible for him to get through one weekend without getting a penalty as well. It's not like it's inevitable that you're going to get these at some point. The other thing is, do you remember the end of the race in Canada? The nonsense that was Max and George under the safety car. So that came about because of Max's one penalty point to the ban. I don't know if the actual incident itself would have been different, but certainly the complaints afterwards were because Max had only 1 point. And it was a complete farce, that whole thing going to the stewards. It was such an absolute nonsense. But that's where Red Bull are thinking, hang on, are Mercedes trying to take advantage of us? If Red Bull are thinking about it this much, then that's almost the bigger worry, that they're kind of having to do things differently. Whereas if Max just drives his normal stuff, doesn't force someone off the road, doesn't overtake off the road, he should be fine. Can I pick you up on something you said a moment ago? You can force another driver off the track in Austria, is what you said, JP. Well, not legally. No, but I want to ask you specifically about turn 2, okay? Uphill approach. We've seen so many incidents there over the years. I'm thinking, goodness, 2001, Montoya and Schumacher. I remember that was one. 2016, do you remember on the final lap, Rosberg and Hamilton? Leclerc and Verstappen 2019. Just what is it about turn 2 that invites trouble on the outside at the exit? So it's obviously got DRS into 1, but it's hard to overtake into 1. But so what you're doing is setting it up better for turn 2. But then turn 2 is a really tricky corner because it's got a big crest right at the apex. So if you're diving for an apex, it's quite difficult to then get a clean exit. So if someone's trying to hang it around the outside, you kind of miss your apex, but you actually get your car really squared off and you don't have the big crest to get the power down. So it's easy enough, basically, to hang it around the outside, get a really good drive off the corner and just be ahead for the next downhill right-hander. Which means that if you get to the apex ahead, you kind of want to bundle the guy on the outside off the road. Otherwise, he's probably going to out-drag you. We saw that with Sainz and Perez as well in a fight a couple of years ago. Which is great for racing, really. It's for fair racing, because it means that cars can go side by side through a few corners. There is then another chance down into the third big braking zone. Though it's technically turn 4, isn't it? Weirdly. But yeah, it's good for racing, but it does just entice the driver on the inside to just get their elbows out and just try and flick the guy on the outside off the road. And I think that's what we've seen. It's also a difficult braking zone. It's uphill. You can brake super deep because it's so steep uphill. And then you can just sort of steam it in, try and square it off. It's a really tight corner. It's got actually kind of all the hallmarks of a great racing corner, that one. Right, we've talked about McLaren versus Red Bull. That's where we think the action at the front is going to be. But can I ask you guys just about Mercedes and Ferrari? Laura, let's start with Ferrari. Team principal Fred Vasseur said they'd massively failed in Canada after failing to execute a clean weekend. Now, he went into Canada under a lot of pressure. The Italian media, the sort of protective shield has disappeared over Fred. I think they were some elements of the Italian media are asking him how much longer he's going to be there. Just what's your take on Ferrari, Laura, and how do you think they're going to go in Austria?
So I think if you look at the results from Canada, so Charles Leclerc was P5, Lewis Hamilton P6. For Charles Leclerc, he was obviously one of the hard starters, having qualified lower down the order. He was calling out and asking and near begging for Plan C, which was the 1-stop. And Ferrari brought him in for Plan B, the 2-stop. And you could sense he was really annoyed. They weren't listening to him. And Ferrari were obviously basing this on the fact that we'd seen so many struggling on the medium in the first stint of the race. But Charles Leclerc clearly felt that he could have made that 1-stop work. Whether it would have made a difference to where he finished, ultimately, I'd imagine not so great. Lewis Hamilton's race was very sadly hampered by a groundhog, which caused damage to his car. When Fred talks about a clean weekend, executing a clean weekend, I guess it's over, one lap, qualifying higher. That's obviously something that Ferrari need to continue to work on. But it's also talking about these little things in a race, and certainly on the strategy and communication side of things that we're hearing from pit wall to driver, and that's an ongoing issue with Ferrari for this year. Lewis Hamilton's issue was that's chance. It's bad luck for the groundhog and for Lewis himself. The car was damaged. There's talk of Ferrari bringing an upgrade to Austria. I think Ferrari are always really keen to downplay any upgrades that they are bringing, and they often say this isn't a big one, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. That's kind of their approach in anything they do. They really downplay it and keep everything calm. That seems to be Fred's mantra, is let's stay calm. I'm not sure how much time Fred has to stay calm. This is the second race in 3 in which, according to Italian media, Fred Vasseur is going to be judged upon and his future decided upon. And when you speak to some Italians, Davide Valsecchi said to us in Canada, which was a valid point, that it seems a tricky time to replace your team principal on the eve of new regulations, to continue the momentum that Ferrari have in developing that 26 car, where obviously most of their work is being done. They're not bringing huge upgrades to this 25 car. To then suddenly completely rock the boat and bring someone new in at the start of 26, Davide pointed out, perhaps would be more destabilising than not. I don't know where Ferrari go from here. It seems an ongoing sentence for this year that it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, tricky weekends, and with the Italian media now turning on Fred Vasseur, it does seem that the pressure is mounting higher than ever.
It doesn't make any sense, though. To me, it makes no sense that Fred's under this pressure suddenly. Let's not forget, Charles didn't really do any Friday practice in Canada. He still had a good chance to put it on pole, in spite of doing no laps on Friday. I mean, the car had potential in Canada, but then he was also really unlucky catching the dirty air from Isaac Hadjar in qualifying. That would have transformed his whole weekend, even with no Friday practice. If he had a normal Friday, I mean, Fred will be looking at a version of events in Canada where they're winning the race. He's a hero, having come out from the pressure of the media on Thursday. But everything went wrong, including the groundhog, as you say, for Hamilton in the other car. So many things weren't good or were unlucky. The strategy made no sense to me at all. And the 2-stop versus the 1-stop was close. Where Ferrari pitted Charles for the second time made absolutely no sense. And I think that's something that they'll have to look at as well. They should have definitely kept Charles out and just hope for a safety car or a red flag, because by pitting him, they were just simply locking in 6th or 5th by the time Lando was out. So it was basically locking in your worst case result rather than hoping for something better, which is what Red Bull would have done in that instance. But overall, Ferrari, they almost won the Constructors' Championship last year. The strategies have been good. Think of Lewis in the Miami Sprint, getting it bang on. Think of Charles last year in Monza, getting it bang on. The pit stops are good. They're not far away, and it feels like it would be a few steps back.
So how do you rate their chances in Austria?
Not good.
It's interesting you say that, because Charles won the race in Austria back in 22. He was second in 23. Carlos inherited that P3 after the Max Lando incident last year, but they've been on the podium here.
So they're set for a P4 then this year. It depends on the upgrade, doesn't it, for this weekend? But on paper, this is not one of their strong circuits. Where Canada, to be fair, was a better one on paper for them. But the long corners, it's not great for them. Maybe the first half of the lap, they'll be good. But again, it's the combination of high-speed and low-speed corners where Ferrari can't find the setup window to deal with it. And that's exactly what Austria has, basically.
Right, what about Mercedes? 1-3 last time out in Montreal. Laura, what about Austria for them?
They seem to love Canada, is what I will say. So I think that track for them, we saw it last year, and yes, in much cooler temperatures, but in warmer temperatures this year, still George Russell on top, Kimi Antonelli with a fantastic drive, not just overtaking Oscar Piastri at the start, but then also defending so well against him as well in the latter stages of the race under so much pressure. And with his exams coming just a day afterwards as well, with all the media waiting.
I can't believe, did he he went and sat exams, did he?
So he didn't come to the premiere, and I said, Kimi's not coming, and everyone, no, he's doing his school exams. So he went and did his blimmin' school exams.
What's he doing that for?
Becoming the 3rd youngest ever podium sitter. Well, it's important to finish your education, kids. And the world's media are sitting outside his school, thrusting a microphone in his face just as he's come out of his maths final exams or whatever. Just mad when you consider.
How was question 17?
Formula One. Yeah. What did you get for that one?
What were your workings?
Those debriefs that you had after exams. You see him as a Formula One driver, and then you see his school.
He's coming out of the exams and he's going into the pen again. He's thinking he's had the tricky questions in Canada. But
where's Laura? Isn't she?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, bless him. But no, I think Mercedes. I think the test now will be for them Austria, whether that rear suspension that they brought onto the car in Canada can help with the overheating of the tyres. That's the big test now is coming to Austria. I actually I've not done my prep and looked at the weather forecast. I'm not in Austria, so I'm not interested in how warm it is. But for this question, I should be. If it is typically very, very warm, very hot, very humid in Austria, then the big test will be whether Mercedes can cope with that in terms of keeping those tyre temperatures in the right window, which they were able to do in Montreal.
Well, Pirelli are going slightly harder than they were in Canada. It's the C3, 4, 5, so sort of mid-range for this year. Jolyon, do you think there are parallels between Bahrain and the Red Bull Ring, just in terms of track layout? I know that the track surface in Bahrain is a lot more abrasive, but a car that works in Bahrain, does it work in Austria too?
I wouldn't necessarily have drawn that one. I know what you mean in terms of the big braking zones. Bahrain is a lot of those big braking zones, right-hand, slower corners. So you've got turn 1 straight into turn 4. You've got the final corner as well, which are similar to the start of Austria. But then in Bahrain, you haven't really got the high speed. And it's the blend of the low and the high speed that makes Austria quite the challenge. Because after you've done those first 3 right-handers, you're then just keeping the average speed after that is really high. You're certainly not going lower than 5th gear, maybe not lower than 6th around the rest of the lap. So that's the blend that you don't get in Bahrain. And there were teams coming out of Bahrain testing. I remember speaking to Ayo Komatsu in Melbourne. And he was saying, we didn't know our car was bad in high speed because there's just not high speed in Bahrain. Got to Melbourne and found out, we've got quite a big deficiency here. Whereas if you had preseason in Austria, you'd kind of find that out pretty. In fact, Austria would be a great pre-season testing venue for the blended
in the
corners.
snow.
In the snow, that would be the problem. Yeah.
I've checked. Talking of snow, I have checked the weather.
No snow.
No snow. We're looking at sunny, hot qualifying, 28 degrees. Race day, cloud sun, 29 degrees. What I will say, I spoke to Toto Wolff immediately after qualifying in Canada, and I said, what does this mean for the race? Because it is going to be warmer than it was here last year, for example, where we had that absolute deluge of rain. And he said, it'll be a completely different ball game. And he almost suggested that we're going to struggle to hold on to the win, even maybe a podium here, And then ultimately in the race, they were in complete control. And George looked brilliant. And we'll have to wait and see whether that 29 degrees compared to Canada's lovely 24 will be the turning point in how they can hold on to those tyres.
Early screenings have audiences raving. F1 the movie is absolutely incredible.
Be ready. Ready for what?
From the director of Top Gun Maverick.
I'm offering you a seat in Formula One, the absolute best in the world.
It's a fun, fast-paced thrill ride with a ton of heart.
You're crazy, bro.
And a reminder of why we love summer movies.
Anything else, Professor?
Try fast. I'll see you down the road.
Just keep watching.
We'll get Laura and Jolyon's podium predictions and some help for our F1 fantasy team shortly. But on top of it being Austrian Grand Prix week, it is also F1 the movie week. You can see it in cinemas from Wednesday the 25th or from Friday the 27th if you're in the US. And F1themovie.com is the place to go to find a screening near you, and you really should see it on the biggest screen you can. It stars Brad Pitt as Sonny Hayes, a driver given a second chance at racing in Formula One.
When I interviewed with you, many veteran drivers...
Yeah, who all turned you down?
How many?
7.
That's a lot. I'm number 7?
You're 8.
This is a disaster.
Starting to feel more like a 9.
Technically, there is one who I've not heard from yet.
So I am a 9.
You know how numbers work, right?
In business, my most inspired ideas come late.
Yeah, best things in life usually arrive 9th, right?
I've been talking to two of the stars you heard in that clip, Damson Idris, who plays Sonny Hayes' teammate Joshua Pearce, and Kerry Condon, who plays Apex Grand Prix Technical Director Kate McKenna.
It was kind of radical because we shot a lot of the movie live with the real Grand Prix races. So a lot of the cars flying by in the background were the real cars happening in real time. So that was sort of, I'd never been done before.
It was insane for me because, I mean, I got to drive on a track, you know? I got to drive on a track. We'd have these 10-minute slots to get these scenes during actual Grand Prix races. But to have the ability to watch the drivers up close and see how they interact and live in that world, it was just so easy as an actor because I could just, oh, that's how they drink their espresso. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I'm just stealing all these different ideas. And then, yeah, when you watch the movie, you could see that all that authenticity was put on the screen.
Tell us a little more about how you researched your roles. I mean, Damson, just elaborate a little bit more on the driving, and Kerry, we'll come to you in a minute. But did you speak to actual drivers?
Oh, yeah.
And who did you model yourself on?
Man, you know what? Every single rookie goes through the same feeling. And not even just in Formula One. They're always trying to prove themselves, even a young actor. So I really related to that. Funny enough, Lamine Yamal, who plays football, was kind of a big deal. And looking at him, I saw similarities between him and Joshua. They're both kind of cocky, but they got the talent to match. But before I even had the part, I drove up somewhere in California and I jumped right in a sim. And I was like, okay, let me see what this is. Did that. I downloaded the game, created a fake Joshua Pearce and won a championship. And then when I finally came to England, I went to Bedford Palmer's Sports. They shoved me in an F3000 and I drove around there in the wet, by the way. And that was the test to get the part. And then once we finally got the part, we headed to Rockingham. We headed to Silverstone, Abu Dhabi, and so many other racetracks to really train for about 4 months consecutively, all the way from F4 up to F2. We did a bit of F1 in France, but all of it really helped, including the spins and crashes. It all helped. Yeah.
Damson, is it true that you were flat through cops at Silverstone in an F2 car? Can you confirm that?
I can confirm I was flat through cops. And I did it in front of Lewis too. So that was a big one for me. I just really wanted to push myself. And I remember when I did it, I was screaming and then kept doing it. But the reason why I had the confidence to do it was, we would do F4 and F3 and I was flat in those. So it was actually a lack of experience that made me go flat in the F2. I didn't know that there was any other way you were supposed to go through cops. So as I'm heading down the straight, I'm not lifting. I'm just like, yeah, this is where I turn. And then when they showed me the kind of like the graphics of it after and all the data, they were like, bloody hell, Damson, you're flat through cops. And I was like, am I? It was actually really cool. Yeah, it was amazing.
That is hugely impressive. Well done to you. Look, Kerry, how about you? Did you speak to actual strategists, actual engineers from the paddock?
Yeah, they were so open-armed to us from the minute we arrived. The first one I went to was in Barcelona, was to just meet people and observe everybody. And everyone was so nice and generous. And particularly Bernie Collins. I learned a lot from Bernie because of her Irish background. I thought that was going to be perfect. And Will Buxton, first time he met me, he goes, you remind me of Bernie Collins. And I thought, yes, bingo, that's what I'm going to base it kind of on Bernie's backstory. But Ruth Boscombe as well was very helpful. And I just kind of found out a little bit about, after they left school, where they went to college and what they studied and like the route that they took to get there. And then with that kind of piece together my backstory and what kind of person I was and how I wanted to play it. And then just little things, like I read the Adrian Newey book, How to Build a Car, which actually was quite, easy to understand. I thought it was going to be like a nightmare, but it was actually easy to understand. And then little things like the notepad that I have when I walk to the pit wall. I asked Bernie, like, what would she have written when on the front page of her notepad? Like, what would you be writing? Just in case the camera caught like a glimpse of my notepad or something. So little tricks. I stole little things from them to try and sell it.
How much prior knowledge of, well, racing or Formula One did you have?
Nothing of Formula One. I mean, absolutely nothing. The only thing I knew was the champagne on the podium. That's my only like image of Formula One. But I knew a lot about horse racing because I have thoroughbred race horses. So I kind of like knew about a racing world and then sort of knew how to learn a lot about a racing world. That kind of helped me a little bit. But yeah, ultimately, like kind of not knowing anything was a bit of a gift, really. You know, I had a blank slate to start with. If I knew too much, it might have been harder to make it as natural as it was.
A lot of what you were shooting was, you know, over the course of a Grand Prix weekend. Tell us what that was like and just how accepting were the other teams, were the drivers, were the media?
They couldn't stand us, mate. They could not wait for us to get out of it. It's the trick. No, I'm playing. You know, in the beginning, me, Brad, Jerry, and Joe, we head into a driver briefing. We kind of told everyone, all the drivers and Stefano and everyone was there, and we said, look, this is what we're attempting to pull off. And they were all just open arms. They were so sweet, so accommodating. And I even heard in Montreal, a couple of people were like, oh man, kind of missed the F1 crew, you know, which is because they were with us for 2 years. And the beauty of that was, you know, everyone is a part of this movie. Everyone in Formula One, including the FIA, know just how big this is for the sport and how this movie is really going to push the sport in an innovative direction and a bigger direction. I believe Formula One, you know, it's already massive, but it even has the potential to be even bigger. And going from Grand Prix to Grand Prix was just, I mean, it was the most exciting thing in the world. You talk about culture. Just, you know you're in Mexico, you know you're in Budapest, you know you're in England. And obviously Silverstone was my favorite time because, you know, I got to sing a national anthem with all the drivers and the fireworks are going over and I look to my right and Max is right there. And I look to my left, it's Brad Pitt. I'm like, what's happening right now? And, you know,
it was kind of surreal, wasn't it?
It was insane. And you know what? The note,
I was on the grid as well, yeah.
The note from Joe was like, look, just calm face, like no smiling. Of course, I could not do that. I'm like, it's the biggest grin on my face. So exciting, so exciting.
That's an interesting moment. You're talking about Silverstone 2023. You're on the actual starting grid.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you had 9 minutes to shoot that scene.
Sometimes less. Yeah, sometimes less. In Hungary at Park Fermé, we had 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you'd had 5 hours to shoot that scene, would it have been any better, or did you nail it?
Oh, we had to nail it.
We had to nail it. Luckily enough, Joe would let us rehearse a bit on the grid before the Grand Prix, so we'd go like 4 or 5 days, rehearse a bit. But of course, you add 100,000 people in the crowd, you add all those people on the grid, things change. I remember we had to rehearse, me and Brad, after the national anthem at that race in Silverstone. We spin, you know, We Will Rock You's playing and we're supposed to walk to the cars. We rehearsed it 1,000,000 times. On the day when we're shooting it, Carlos Sainz walks right in front of me. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess Carlos Sainz is in the movie now. And I had to speed up to like get past him. But those are the type of things that would happen, you know, just natural things. But when you watch the movie, it just makes it all the more real and all the more true. And it's a testament to so many of the cast and crew. Everyone brought their A game. Everyone was on point to deliver what we needed to deliver.
Well, it's immersive. It is a wonderful film. I feel very privileged to have seen it already. Guys, look, final one. F1 the sequel?
Oh, hopefully. Hopefully, yeah, because it was really sad when it ended. It was such a family, you know, we'd really travelled together and the crew really helped us. The camera department were so helpful to our performance. And so saying goodbye was tough.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, I'd love it. Yeah, but that'll depend. And hopefully everyone likes the movie and it resonates with people. So we'll see.
Man, I really hope everyone loves the movie. It's not just a racing movie, you know. It's a movie full of heart, full of soul. We're watching the character of Sonny Hayes, you know, be given a second chance. And that's what everyone in life deserves. So I can't wait for people to walk away from this movie just feeling how we felt when we all watched movies back in the day. We go with your mum, you go with your kids, you go with your date, you have some popcorn. My drink of choice is a Coke, and you have a great time. Yeah.
Very well said. Thank you for your time. Really good to catch up. Good luck. Good luck with it. And hope to see you at a race again soon.
Thanks a million.
Bless you. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Peace.
So it's great to hear from Damson and Kerry. And don't forget, F1 The Movie is out this week, and you can book your tickets at f1themovie.com. Now, Laura and Jolyon, time for your podium predictions for the Austrian Grand Prix. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Oh, crikey. Go on. Go.
Well, I think we're going to see a Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen podium. That's not a bold prediction, I'm aware.
In what order?
Yeah, that's the question. That is the question, TC. I'm going to say, go on, Lando Norris to bounce back with a win in Austria. Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, I agree with the top three, but I think this is a Max win in Austria. So I'm going to go Max, Oscar, Lando on the podium, getting the confidence back.
Damn, that is exactly what I was going to go with, which is really boring and doesn't work on a pod. I agree with you. I think this has got Max Verstappen written all over it, partly because there's something about the way he attacks this track that makes a difference. I take you back to that 0.4 of a second in qualifying last year. But to say something different, how about Max for the win, Oscar P2, and Nico Hülkenberg for P3.
Wow. You see, if that happens, you're going to get rid of your monologue just before it, and you're going to say, I knew this all along.
That's amazing.
I of course.
I love a Nico podium.
Well,
and he's back-to-back points. He's going well.
Thank you.
The upgrade's clearly working because it's two different tracks with two different characteristics with Montreal and Spain. I'm all for a Nico Hülkenberg
There will
podium.
need to be an incident or an incident, to quote Charles Leclerc, for that to happen. But there's something about Nico and Sauber that I'm loving at the minute. There's a bit of momentum there. The car is getting better. And who doesn't want to see Nico Hülkenberg get that first F1 podium? Now, before you go, I also need your help with F1 Fantasy because I'm coming under a little bit of pressure from the producers after a pretty dismal performance from our F1 Nation racing team in Canada. We only scored 110 points, our worst weekend since China. This is our team: Oscar Piastri, Alex Albon, Fernando Alonso, Nico Hülkenberg, and Isaac Hadjar, with McLaren and Williams as our constructors. And we've got $106.5 million to work with. Now, Laura, you are my deputy team principal. Really, you should be team principal of the F1 Fantasy.
I've neglected my duty a little bit, I feel. And then I'm gonna throw Jamie, producer, under the bus here, because I gave you some cracking advice for Miami. And Jamie did not understand the advice and used a very valuable chip in the wrong way. And what I asked, Jamie's actually now in vision shaking his head at me. What I asked you to do was to use the...
You wanted plan C, and you got plan B.
I wanted plan C, and completely.
And now you're under pressure.
I wanted you to use... Yeah, I'm Fred Vasseur. I wanted you to use the unlimited transfer chip. Now, I got the name slightly wrong. What Jamie used was the unlimited, which is where you can put all the very best drivers in and get loads of points. And so Jamie put in, drivers at the other end of the budget scale. And so I feel that Jamie has sabotaged me and you, Tom, and I don't know where we go from here. And I wanted to make it very clear that was not my advice to you.
Well, you've got that off your chest, Laura. I'm pleased. Are you feeling better now?
Yes. Because Lawrence Barretto came on this podcast and said, doesn't sound like Lauren got that quite right. And that's not correct. So I'm here defending my honour as F1 Fantasy, F1 TV leaderboard leader.
You're still leading that. Wow. Well, look, come on.
Of course I am.
Tell us about Austria then. What do we need to do? And I'm making notes this time.
Okay. So firstly, we don't choose our team today. I'm going to be really honest with you. You've got to choose your team on Saturday of race weekend after FP3. You look at all the data. You play the full strategy card here. You look at all the data. You look at who's good, who's not, who could get you points starting from the back and overtaking. and you make your decision on Saturday.
So do you
That's what I'm gonna say.
do you go for the person who's going to get pole and win the race? I know that sounds like a silly question, or do you want to go for someone at the back who might put in a surprise performance? Where are all the points awarded?
So you do get a lot of points for overtaking. So my team for Canada, for example, I kept in McLaren and Ferrari because I wasn't sure Mercedes were going to come good, which I regret now because they were brilliant. But I swapped out Oscar Piastri for George Russell. So I put George in, and then I tend to put in that big driver, 2 big constructors, and then fill in what I can with the remaining budget. So I had Bortoletto, Gasly, Hadjar and Alonso. Hadjar and Alonso are pretty good because they're on all right runs at the moment. Gasly, Bortoletto, that depends on what budget you've got left. So what I would say to you, Tom, is that
make your decision on Saturday is what you're saying.
Well, make your decision on Saturday, but I think you need to find a way with your budget to put in the 2 biggest constructors you can, whether that is a Mercedes and a McLaren or McLaren and a Ferrari. McLaren and Ferrari is a bit trickier. But if you can put in a Mercedes and a McLaren and then your one big driver, be that an Piastri, who's more affordable than Lando Norris, for example, then you fill in the gaps everywhere else.
Okay,
that's my advice to you.
Now, that is good advice. JP, are you good on F1 Fantasy?
No.
Yes, you are, Jolyon. You need to chip in.
Well, hang on.
You need to also change your team because you've just left. I swear you've got like Daniel Ricciardo still in there.
He's rolled in from last year.
I don't think you're taking this seriously, JP. Right.
Just refresh your team and play the game.
If there's one thing Laura takes more seriously than F1 TV, it's F1 Fantasy.
I never in a million years thought I'd be one of these people who became obsessed with fantasy, but it's absolutely addictive. And I said to myself, after winning triumphantly last year by the slimmest of margins in Abu Dhabi, that I would never do this again because it genuinely began to ruin my life. And here I am doing it again.
Okay, JP, I want one driver to follow for F1 Fantasy in Austria, and don't say Daniel Ricciardo.
May still be in my team. One driver. So you've got quite a lot of Williams in your team. Because I was thinking you've had a good weekend there with Hülkenberg, with Alonso scoring quite well, but Williams are falling back in the last couple of weekends, aren't they? So who would? You know who I think will have a? Oh, you've already got him in. Isaac Hadjar. Hadjar for some good points.
Do you know what? Haas have always gone very well in Austria as well, haven't they? They had a double points finish last year. I wonder whether a Haas driver might be a good call. Laura says no.
No, nothing to do with Haas. Yes, but get your big constructors in because they bring more points than a singular driver would.
Okay, you've said that twice now. Okay, I will.
Okay. Well, listen to me then.
Oh, guys, look, thank you very much.
Very calm.
Look, the take-home message is look at FP3 on Saturday morning and make your decision after that. And don't forget that F1 Fantasy is free to play. Just go to f1.com or the official F1 app to create your team after FP3 on Saturday. And you can enter our league at any time. Just search for the F1 Nation World Championship 2025 to compete against us and other listeners. And good luck to everybody in Austria. Well, Jolyon, Laura, thank you both very much for your time. It's been great to have you on the show again. Who am I seeing in Austria?
Neither.
Neither of us.
You'll be there on your own.
Yeah, sorry, TC. I normally go to Glastonbury Festival this weekend, but we aren't going this year. So I will spend the weekend sitting at home, watching the coverage, enjoying the race like a true fan.
Well, Laura, enjoy being at home for once. And Jolyon, very good luck with the baby.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Now, in selected countries, you can watch all the racing on F1 TV. And you can keep across all the action via f1.com and the official F1 app. But for now, thank you very much for listening. And we will, of course, be back on Monday from the Red Bull Ring paddock with our review of the Austrian Grand Prix. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.